Welcome, Paul Barron. Paul is a multi-million dollar Amazon seller, amazing.com instructor, and an expert consultant on chatbot marketing automation. His brands have received consulting from Shark Tank's Barbara Corcoran and have been featured on the Rachel Ray Show, in Forbes Magazine, on televised and print news, and in national magazines and blogs. As founder and CEO of Messenger Bot University, Paul teaches messenger marketing automation strategies which leverage ManyChat for product launching, ranking, list building, and review generation to Amazon and e-commerce sellers. Paul, welcome to the Post-Purchase Pro podcast.
This is the only podcast that dives deep into post-purchase marketing to help Amazon sellers increase sales, ranking, reviews, and profits. It's everything that happens after the initial sale that makes a difference. We call this the back end. Hey, Paul, welcome to the show. This is the Post-Purchase Podcast. Been really stoked about this. Looking forward to it for several weeks, Paul. In fact, I tried to strong arm you into doing this interview last week, but Seth, always tapping the brakes on me. So thanks for that, Seth. It's been 2 months now since we got a chance to hang out with you on the beach over here at our I can't say the name, our retreat. It's a private function, as you know. So looking forward to catching up with you here and finding out more about you, Paul. Had a great time with you over there. And today we're going to talk about the importance of list building, Amazon control, your definition of what is a brand, and then what to expect from these messenger bot flows. I like to say ManyChat. Seth likes to make fun of me, so we'll just call it messenger bot flows. Paul, say hello and introduce yourself, and we have a ton of cool questions.
Yeah, so good. I feel like my voice just cracked. Yeah, nice to be here. It's funny. We first met this fall. I mean, we met over Zoom, was it? Or I don't know, video chat before, and then in person. It's crazy because I don't know why it took us this long to meet, because I've been preaching the same thing you guys have been doing for years, which is basically, why the hell aren't you guys building a list? Like, it doesn't make sense to me with most people, but yeah. Messenger Bot University was iteration one. It's actually chat marketing university now, and I started another agency, not another agency that put pause on putting out new content to start an agency called the Chat Agency. So I've been very busy with not just Messenger, it's now Instagram Direct and WhatsApp. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can bug people on now.
That's amazing, Paul. So, like you said, Paul, it feels like you are a brother from another mother. You speak our same language, and it feels like you fit right in. I mean, when we were hanging out on the beach there, I don't think that anybody else would have been able to, step into the conversation that we already had in our minds as easily as you did, Sean.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you here today, buddy. Before we start talking about what is chatbot messaging and the like, I like to get just a little bit of background. Tell us, who is Paul of House Barron?
Who am I? Well, how far back do you want me to go?
Oh, 15 minutes or so.
15 minutes. 15 minutes ago. Well, immediately, I'm a father primarily. That's my core identity. Is I'm a father and husband. I've got two small kids. I got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And my 7-year-old is in Cub Scouts, and we're doing a Pinewood Derby. And by we, I mean he, but it's mostly me doing the work. I don't know if anybody listening has done Cub Scouts, but he basically has these grandiose ideas. Like, he wanted to put an actual jet on his
Paul Jr.
on his Pinewood Derby car, and I was like, well, one, that's against the rules, and two, I don't think we can do that, because we were watching these YouTube videos, and there was a guy who put like a CO2 cartridge or something on it and like shot it through.
That's funny.
Anyway, so I'm tired today. Yeah, I'm going back down to I'm flying to Alabama tonight, actually, to hang out with Tim Jordan, and he was at the little retreat dealy too. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm tired because I've been trying to get this stupid Pinewood Derby done, and
Sure, you guys are gonna win.
Right. And the funny thing is I'm in my head, I'm like, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. This isn't for me. But I'm still building the car. I'm like, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The old man told me one time that it was nose grease, from about right here on the axle. That was the secret to his success at our local Pinewood soapbox derby, they call it in Morristown, Seth, back home there. They did it on the hill every summer. So I think explain to your son about the importance of a little nose wax or nose grease.
Nose grease. That's funny. I'll tell him that.
The axle. So obviously, you and I and Seth, we've been on the same journey, if you want to call customer list building a journey, while a lot of sellers, specifically those of you that are on Amazon and other online platforms, they focus every day, Paul, on creating transaction after transaction, when in reality, the real business and the brand, if you will, is or should be focused on building a relationship, nurturing that relationship, and then profiting. So at Post Purchase Podcast and our Post Purchase Pro brand, our entire mantra is build, nurture, and then profit, not necessarily in the other order. So for me, Paul, without a customer list in our industry, my friend, it's like waking up every morning unemployed and having to go out there and reinvent yourself. So imagine if you had an amazing job that was paying well, but every Friday you cash your paycheck and quit your job and then you start over Monday morning looking for a new job. It's ludicrous, right? So when did you, Paul Barron, realize the importance of creating an audience?
Yeah, I mean, it was from day one, really, because when we launched, so we launched this brand in 2015. The name of one of my businesses is called Bow and Bell Littles, or BB Littles, and I'm a little bit of an oddity in the Amazon space because I tell people what we do. You go to these big conventions or conferences or whatever, and last year I spoke at Prosper, is a good example, and I used as an illustration bully sticks, like searching for influencers using bully sticks as that's your product. And the whole point of my speech was how you can build a list and build a group of influencers that are raving about your brand and follow you everywhere on social media, and how, if you do this, it increases the value of your brand and all this stuff. Anyway, end of my speech, guy comes up to me. He's like, great speech, but why did you have to bring up bully sticks? And I was like, it was just an example. Yeah, but why bully sticks? And I was like, I don't know, it was the first thing I thought of. But I sell bully sticks. I'm like, did you listen to my speech? Anyway, so it's always been in my head. And like, actually what's in my head, the back of my head is my dad telling me, we don't do half-ass jobs. Like, that's the thing that is like blaring through my head. If I'm going to work, if I'm going to do a job. So I told you this, right, about the Cub Scout Pinewood Derby. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right the first time. Because
what a good dad. You're amazing. I can hear my dad right now echoing in my head, son, anything worth doing is worth doing right. And I'm like, why can't I just take a shortcut and get to the finish line, Dad? So right. I can relate.
So that's the way that I've been thinking from the start. It really sunk into my head in 2016. So the year after we launched, we were wanting to expand into European markets, which we did in the UK. It was very poorly done, but I used Viral Launch to launch some products in the UK. We got some great sales, but the ranking didn't stick. We had some localization issues. Anyway, I went through that point, and way back then, Viral Launch was kind of a platform that you could use, to launch your products, almost like Rebate Key was. I say was because Rebate Key does not exist anymore. And for those of you that are listening to this podcast, if you're not an Amazon seller, Rebate Key basically was a platform that allowed people to sign up as buyers to get a whole bunch of, like, literally any product you could think of, like, get a rebate for. You can go on Amazon, you buy it, and you get a rebate. I hated doing stuff like that because my experience again with Viral Launch and thinking through doing it right the first time was I paid, I had to pay Viral Launch a fee, plus I had to give their audience, because this is the thing, they built an audience. The reason why I was using them was because they had an audience, and I had to give their audience a 90% off discount. This is back in 2016. I'm like, this is stupid, because why would I pay them and give them a discount when I could run ads and do all of this myself and build my own audience so that I don't ever have to pay somebody else again? And so I guess the seeds of it were planted back in whatever, when I was a kid, but thinking through like the actual, okay, I know that list building is a good idea. When it really sunk home was the first year one in business, we're expanding, thinking of Viral Launch, thinking how stupid it was that I was paying them. And I met Casey Goss, he's a buddy of mine. He's one of the founders of, smart as hell. And I've told him, I was like, I just want to pay you. I mean, it was a great service, but it didn't make sense to me. And I'm so thankful that I did now, because now with all the shitstorm that, was kicked up with the terms of service updates when was it, last year, this year? I don't even know. Everything goes so quick with Amazon that everybody's freaking out, and they're like, well, what do I do now? I'm like, I don't know. If you did it right from day one, you wouldn't be asking that question.
I love your first response to every question. I don't know. How'd you come up with bully stick? I don't know. Yeah, we often talk about pizza cutters and all kinds of wacky products. It's funny how you can just grab something, and then instead of focusing on the content or the strategy, they're primarily focused on, oh my gosh, someone's going to find out what I'm doing.
Right.
And like you, Seth and I have always been an open book. I mean, no one's going to get all of the sales, right? So, we come from a position of abundance versus scarcity, and always have. And you're right, Paul. It used to be just a secret subject, like, shh, don't tell anybody what you're selling. It's like, who cares? No one's going to get it all. But Seth, I know you have some questions there. I keep robbing the mic, so go.
You always do. Well, what comes to mind is when you and I were staying up at 2 a.m. riffing on why rebates are terrible and why you shouldn't take those shortcuts, like you were saying, Sean, because if you take the shortcut, then later on you always pay for it. If you skip the step, you always have to go back and take that step. So you give your products away for free using rebates, and what happens? Well, eventually, like you said, Paul, Amazon bans it. And so what are you left with? You're left with no strategy, no asset. So you and I stayed up, like I said, for a few hours talking about the right way to do business. And what really stuck out to me, Paul, was your love and appreciation for building that audience. So you can use audiences for so many things, especially when they know, like, and trust you, like an audience of your own real customers, like what we talk about building every single week on this podcast. So Paul, you've talked about using your audiences to rank. You've talked about other strategies. What's like the best way in your business that you've been able to use your audience?
I don't know that there's one best way, because we've leveraged them for so many things. We've leveraged them in launches, leveraged that. I mean, we're in the middle tail end of a case study with ManyChat where we're building up our brand ambassador team using Instagram chat marketing. And we've leveraged our audience that we built up to basically help promote that. I mean, the thing is that I'm not just about like building a large, huge audience, right? I mean, we're working together on the email stuff now, and we have like 21,000 people on our email list, which isn't a ton, but we pared it down over the years. I mean, we've had hundreds of thousands of people on our email list, but we just keep the active and engaged people on. Yeah. And I don't want a big list for a big list's sake. I want a list of active, engaged people that are excited. And the ultimate, I guess, the apex of that for us is our brand ambassador team or brand rep team, because those people, like, we talk to on a nearly daily basis inside Facebook groups and stuff. And when we're doing launches, we're doing anything, we go to them and we say, hey, can you please share this with your team? And so that's a step up from just like your email subscriber list, right? Where you're sending out sales notifications and that sort of thing, which you guys crush it at. I feel like we've done a good job is building up that systematically, and we're getting better at systematizing it as we go on. We've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years now. Is building up that team of brand ambassadors to really help us whenever we need them. Literally, like, we'll go to them and say, hey, we're launching this wet bag. Here's your free samples, whatever, right? So they have all their free samples, and then we just ask them, hey, can you give us like this type of video? Like, we make those requests in our group, and the next day we'll get 3 videos, like that. And so it's not just like people that are excited about your product, but they're excited about your brand and your company and your product to the extent that they want to help you grow.
So Paul, this is something that you and I spoke about the other day, and it's really exciting. So Sean, what Paul's doing is he's using his existing customers as brand ambassadors to use their network because they're passionate about Paul's brand, and they get to share to their network. So it's like a network effect that it grows the audience exponentially. And that's an amazing way that we've never used our own audience. And kudos to you, Paul, for coming up with it.
Yeah. Call that the Nano influencer framework. That's my loving term for it, because
Nano influencer framework.
Yeah. NIF. Yeah, NIF, because everybody is an influencer. Everybody is influential. Unless you literally in the real world never talk to anybody and you stay in your home, you have influence with at least 1 or 2 people. Yeah. And I think that the injustice that the influencer marketing industry has done in our brains and social media in general is it's given us this perception that unless you have thousands of people following you, which, think about that in the real world, like, that'd be kind of creepy, actually. Like, if you had thousands of people just listening to your life, like, I would be creeped out. But we've devalued this idea that 100 people. Okay. Like, we've devalued this idea that 100 people or 10 people is a lot. You get 10 people in my tiny house, that's a lot of people in this house. You get 10 people in a giant warehouse, it doesn't feel that much. But my point is that everybody has influence. And so we call it the Nano influencer framework because we're teaching these women, primarily women, to leverage their influence with their friends and family to, if they want to become like influencers, like we've helped several women do that, which is really cool. Like, get paying gigs and more clients and things because we've sort of trained them how to do it.
He's speaking the language of your wife, Ashley, isn't he, Seth? She's stoked about this online influencing. And as you said, Paul, everyone is an influencer. You have some circle of influence unless you're a hermit living in a cave. So oftentimes we'll talk to sellers, within our network, and they'll say, well, I only have like 1,200 friends on Facebook and about 200 email addresses. We actually created an entire Amazon consulting agency, and we started with 114 email addresses. And those email addresses were obtained from people joining us in Google Hangouts where we were sharing content for free. You have to start somewhere. 2 is better than none or better than 1, right? And 3 is better than 2. So yeah, really, really cool. So I want to throw a little stick in your gears here for your soapbox car, but you have spoken about, and I'll quote, how to launch and rank #1 on Amazon in 2 weeks. Do you remember?
Oh man, yeah. That was back in.
This is a two-part question. Number one, what makes your ranking strategy better? And if folks who are listening or watching are so inclined, could we send them to a URL that we already have created for you where you're willing to share the slides from that presentation?
So wait, you already created it for me?
We have the landing page. What I would like to say is go to this URL and you can
Yes.
download the slides.
Yeah,
Is that okay with you?
absolutely.
So if you go to postpurchasepro.com/Paul, then we're going to give you Paul's slide deck for how to rank number one on Amazon 2 weeks. Like he's pulling up the URL right now. About to call me out that there's a placekeeper. But remember, the show doesn't go live for another 2 weeks, Paul. So don't get technical on me. What makes your number one ranking strategy better than others?
It relies on just primarily. I mean, I don't say it outright in the speech, but it basically is predicated on the idea that you have people that give a shit about your brand.
Danny, tick the box contains explicit language. This is only the second time in the history of the show.
I know. I used to never swear, and then I got a job as an inside salesman. This is prior to me working for myself, and like literally never swore. I wanted to be a pastor when I grew up, so never swore at all. And then I started working with salesmen, and good Lord, it was like baptized with sailors in a drunk tank.
And the only thing worse than hanging out with those salespeople are hanging out with Amazon entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So my strategy, what you're asked, why it's better, is it's predicated on the idea first and foremost that people are going to want to buy your product, that you're not going to have to give it away for free. And it's so stupid that I have to say that first and foremost, because in the Amazon industry, we've gotten to the point where people are like, I can't give my products away for free. I don't know how I'm going to rank. Like, I don't know. Have you ever thought about making a real sale? Crazy thought. You ever thought about building a following that cares about you? So that my launch strategy is, this one doesn't have a sexy name. I call it the calendar launch.
Even those free car washes cost money, don't they?
Right. Everything costs money. Come on.
It is free car wash today only. Well, how much is it?
High school economics 101. Nothing is free. There's always a cost. There's always a cost. And sometimes the cost is implied and you don't want to pay the cost. Free can sometimes be the most expensive thing on the planet. But anyway, coming back to my diatribe of why my stuff is better. I built it I called it a calendar launch system. And basically this pre-fills your launch funnel. So this is where I think Seth and you were riffing on this sort of idea. Instead of sending it, so let's boil it down to brass tacks, the easiest thing that somebody could do. Let's say they have a list of people. Instead of sending 100% of your emails on day one, you send them over a few days, or you do send those emails, but you allow people to sign up to reserve a day of their choosing, that they can purchase your product at a discount, because we don't do rebates. And so that's the hook. The hook is, hey, we're doing this launch thing. Say they've signed up to be a VIP team member or whatever, and they get insider secret deals, whatever. They get access to be able to reserve a day of their choosing. They can pick a product. Now, the day of their choosing is all the slots are picked by me and or the algorithm that I wrote that basically determines how many units we want to move in a given day to rank for a specific keyword. So, whatever tool you want to use, Helium 10, Zonguru, I mean, there's Sellerize, Seller Tools, they all have their little magic formula that tells you, if you're ranking for this keyword, you want to move this many units in a given day, right? Like Seller Tools is great for that. I think their keyword research is awesome. So say you want to rank for CBD oil, which you can't now. So I'll use that because you can't sell this. So Mr. Bully Sticks Man isn't going to come up to me after the speech and say, why did you use CBD oil? I didn't listen to anything. I got fixated on one thing and I'm mad at you. So why? Okay, so let's say you want to move 60 units a day. What my algorithm does is it gradually distributes it over time, so it's an upward trending velocity. So it's not 60 units a day, it averages out to 60, but it averages out in an upward trend. So that if you're launching, say day one, you have 10 sales, day two, you have 4 sales, and it's designed to sort of fluctuate so that it looks organic. That is really good because it shows the Amazon algorithm that, let's say that all they have to know about your product. If you're talking to a machine, you serve this machine a bunch of data. And you say, here machine, here's data. What should you do with this data? And the machine says, well, let's see, what does it look like this data is tending to do? Oh, it looks like this data is tending in an upward trend. I think that we should put this data at a higher position than this data, because they don't give a shit about your product. It's data. It's all data. And so they're looking at it and say, well, this looks like it has an upward trend in sales, so we're going to put it here. And the other thing too is if you're doing this during your honeymoon phase, Amazon is really lovey-dovey with you. It's like they're
honeymoon phase.
Yeah, it is. It's a honeymoon phase. They're really trying to woo you until they like really slap you around later, and you're like, why did I get involved in this relationship? But when you're in that honeymoon phase with Amazon, they're going to give you all sorts of benefits of the doubt. And one of those things is, again, if you're at that 2 week state specifically, you start at day one, you have sales. It's live, you get sales. You're feeding that data to the machine. Amazon is trying to figure out where to rank this. You're doing nothing but good thing. Then the other thing about this again is that you're doing it with your audience, or you're doing it with an audience that you can build using Facebook. And so the method that I teach is how to set this up in Facebook, specifically with ManyChat using Facebook Messenger. Now, obviously platforms have changed and whatnot since I gave this speech, and it has become a little bit more easy to do this, but yeah, so that's my strategy in a nutshell. Give it to your list, randomly give them specific days, and then what I do is then I remind them the day before and then the day of that your discount is going live. And the reason why I allow people to pick their days is it's all in psychology. That if you look at like how hotels work, hotels basically track their revenue based on predictions on reservations. That money actually hasn't come in yet, but the power of reservations are super strong in the psychological, like we're all similar, wired in the same way, like we think the same way as humans. So if you commit to something, the follow through rate is substantially higher than if you're forced to do it, or you're signed up for it, or you don't get a chance to pick. So wow. That is it in a nutshell. Now what I would like to experiment with that I haven't done yet is actually having people sort of pre-buy, put down like $1 to reserve a 50% discount or something. Because the psychology behind that is anytime anybody pays you anything, they're 20 times more likely to buy anything else that you give them. So that's why, building an email list is, like, in my head, a no-brainer, because they're already familiar with you. They've already paid you money. You might as well ask them to buy again. And I
love what you're talking about there, Paul. And true to what we discuss internally every day, we have a strategy that we call the Amazon Tripwire, which is basically open the door, your gateway product, if you will, Paul, with something easier to launch, like a not necessarily smaller, but a lower barrier to entry product. Use that product to build a list, right? And then use that list to launch your high barrier to entry product where you really make the profits. It's amazing to me how many people are totally okay with completely blowing out their inventory and giving their stock away for free. Can you imagine walking outside and handing every person in front of you a $100 bill? But when it comes time to sell their business, we'll say, they balk at the idea of giving a broker 10% for bringing them a couple $1 million offer. But they give their inventory away every month to try to grow their business. It's ridiculous. It goes against everything that I believe in. So, what stinks about this right now, Seth, is that we're almost out of time for the show. So I'm gonna let you wrap it up with your questions that you like to ask. But remember, grab Paul's slides to his how to launch and rank #1 on Amazon in 2 weeks. Get that at postpurchasepro.com/Paul, Paul. Do it now. And Seth, I'll let you wrap this up. We definitely, Paul, have to get you back on here to further this conversation, because my mind is spinning with some of the things that you just said to me for the first time. The very first time. Now, so we have to get that out again, because we're on the same page, my friend. We're just about probably 1,100 miles apart.
Yeah, Paul. So when I heard you talking about building a real customer list and using that list to drive the growth in your Amazon business, that's when I knew that we had to get you on the show. But like Sean said, we're running short on time here. So we always like to ask this question, because we love to learn and we love to grow. So Paul, what is your favorite business book?
Oh, man. Well, right now, I've been geeking out about that $100 million offer book.
Yes.
I mean, you told me about that, what, a month ago?
Yep.
Or so, something like that. And I picked it up and read it in a weekend, like super quick read, amazing, great book. So I've been geeking out about that. If I'm gonna break your rules and go with more than one. So that's a great one. Anything written by Dan Ariely, and Dan Ariely is a behavioral economist. Guy is insanely smart, and so some of the concepts that I talked about are represented in this book that Dan wrote, and it's called Predictably Irrational. And it's
sitting right back there.
It's so good. The thing is like, you don't think of it. It's a what would you call it? A psychology book? I wouldn't necessarily. It's sort of
I think psychology, persuasion, something like that. Like you can depend on. I mean, it's insane some of the things that we do as humans, and we don't even realize it until someone calls us on it.
Right?
Like you just talked about giving product away for free because that's what you've been trained to do. But you know, it's like if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail, right? So you can pick up some more tools along the way, like the tools that you're sharing and these gold nuggets that you're dropping on us here. Then it changes everything. And that's what we're all about. We're about, hey, let's question the status quo. Let's go over here and think a little bit differently. How about this, Paul? Like you said, have you ever thought about making a real sale for a full price to a customer that actually wants to buy your product? Why don't we go use real business fundamentals, real marketing, and try to create a brand and a following that will be there for you? a following of hyperactive, rabid fans who are there when you go to launch your new product instead of having to give it away to someone else's list. It drives me insane, my friend.
Yep. I mean, I'll give stuff away, but it's to my list as a reward for something they've done, namely purchase. Like that's when I start giving stuff away. Or yeah, but anyway, I don't need to get on that horse.
So Danny's hanging out in the background there, and I've been twisting his arm for the last a week or so, telling him to get the $100 million offers by Alex Hormozy, an amazing, phenomenal book. Changes the entire way that we approach our business right now today. So Danny just sent me a crying out loud, whatever that emoji is, where the tears are flowing and he's laughing. Probably because he hasn't finished the book yet. So we're going to have to take him out and tar and feather him for that today. So I know you have another question that you love to end with.
Yeah, we'd love to ask a fun question at the end here, Paul, just to kind of get inside your mind and see some of the fun stuff. So Paul, I know your favorite couple of business books right now, but what has been like your favorite purchase you've ever made, like a splurge purchase, or just something you've really enjoyed for a long time? We're all looking for something fun here. What do you got?
Okay, so this was a gift. It's not a purchase, but this knife right here, I think this made its way. So it's a Leatherman knife. It's got a nice locking blade. The normal, like the,
Man, you got it all.
Pliers, those pliers with like the wire cutter here. And then it has a two head, like there's a standard screwdriver, and then there's a slot that you can have a bit for like a different screwdriver bit. So this is the fourth. The first one I lost. My wife gave it to me as a gift. The first one fell out of my pocket running down the Great Sand Dunes in southern Colorado. So we bought a new one. This is like the Monty Python where he's like, the first one burnt down and fell into the swamp. The second one sank into the swamp and then burned. Third one, but yeah. So the second one broke. Got a warranty replacement. This is basically the third warranty replacement. This made it down to Gulf Shores to your trip.
Really?
This saved. No, I mean I checked it. Yeah, checked it in my luggage. This saved our asses when we were out fishing in the Gulf. So obviously, Tim and I were out every morning at like 4, and out fishing. And there was a mechanical malfunction on the boat that he thought that he had wrenches, and he didn't. So we had to use trusty old Leatherman.
Oh, don't say Leatherman. That's what I call it. Seth, no, Leatherman.
Trusty old Leatherman, Leatherman, Mr. Leather. No, this purchase right here, like I use this every single day. I always have it in my left pocket. And when I don't have it, I feel a little naked. Like where's my pacifier, Mom? I need my binky.
That's funny. It's like the what is it? The Ron Gronkowski commercial. Mom, where are my football pants?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
If you've never seen it, Seth, then you need to check it out. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, postpurchasepro.com/Paul to grab your copy of Paul's slides from his amazing speech about how to launch and rank #1 on Amazon in 2 weeks. I love it. Who doesn't want to be #1? And 2 weeks, I mean, that's pretty good frame of reference for getting it done quickly, right, Paul? Any past or parting words of wisdom before we end the recording and book you for the next?
Leaders are readers. If you intend to do anything in life, you need to grow your brain before you can grow physically. So read.
Another one from my own dad, Ray Hart. He always said readers are leaders. So I guess it means the same thing. So
that's I think John Maxwell probably just plagiarized him and then just flipped it. And he's like, now it's my saying.
Hey, it's mine too. So I'm gonna call him out on it. Paul, a real pleasure, my friend. Love your concepts. Obviously, we both believe in the same things. We're traveling the same path, and looking forward to having you on here again. This is Post Purchase Pro podcast. Seth, take us out.
Yes, Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. Like Sean said, we feel like you're our brother from another mother. So looking forward to having you back on. For Sean, my co-host here, I'm Seth Stevens. This has been the Post Purchase Pro podcast.